So, Cote, I was hanging out with my best friend Bonnie this weekend. She's about the same age as me. I'm 46. And we were talking about how we're like the last generation to grow up without internet. Not only without internet, but we didn't even have like personal computers at our houses when we were kids. Did you?
Mm. Yeah. But my dad worked at IBM. So.
Oh, okay. Right on. So just like pure playing in the dirt, making stuff up, reading books, like real actual paper books, like that was our childhood. Yeah. And then we have people like my son who did have internet, but then it was slow internet. Mm-hmm. Then we have kids that are grow up with streaming internet on demand, whatever they want, whenever they want. They can Google anything. And now kids born these days or young these days have freaking AI. What's that going to do to them as adults?
Yeah, well, we're very far from dirt. We went through dirt, wood pulp, maybe like fax machines, kind of downloading things slowly. Yeah. And then fast internet. Yeah. And then the AI stuff. Well, I think I comment on this frequently, but I feel like I can't get my kids to use AI enough. And I try to just shove it on them all the time. And they're always like, no, I'm fine. I think maybe I haven't figured out how to motivate to them, like why you should be using this, like what would be useful. Because I think I'm always trying to get them to use it for school. And maybe that's my problem is they're like, how about nothing when it comes to school?
Or they're like asking you questions about life and how to be a human. And as your dad, you're like, stop asking me. Stop troubling me with that. Go ask your computer overlord.
This finely tuned robot that I've created for you.
Awesome. The future of humanity. I feel great about that. Yeah.
I think it'll be good.
But I do think like some critical thinking skills for our whole species are going to fly right out the window.
Yeah. It could be. I mean, I guess the technologist argument would be like, well, you have to have it be pedantic with you and explain why it's doing that instead of just giving you the answer. But it's not like when we used to go to do a Google search, we would have it explain how it got to it. We would just get the answer. We don't need, we want to be like, where's the cheapest tofu I can get? And we don't want it to be like, well, here's how I would do that. And then eventually I'll just tell you what it is.
I would love to hear our guest's opinion on how exactly our species is doomed. Add some color to it, or whether it is at all, really. But how do you think AI is going to affect kids? Betty, will you introduce yourself, please?
Hello. Hi, Whitney. Hi, Cote. I am, for folks listening, Betty Junod, CMO of Heroku, and I know you from Salesforce, and I know you lovely people from VMware.
Yeah, we all used to work together.
Yes. So glad to be reconnected and on this podcast with y'all.
Yeah, so glad you're here. And I want to hear, I know that you've been doing a lot of writing and such about AI. How do you think AI is going to shape future generations?
I think, I have school-age children. And so it's interesting to see how each of them react to it. Where one of them is like, I'm using it all the time when I'm doing my homework. And I'm like, well, you're doing more than copy and paste, right?
Yeah.
Let me check your work. There you go. And I have another one who's completely literally rejects all things technology. Like I have to fight with them to carry their phone with them when they go places. Cause I'm like, how will I know when to pick you up?
From
said destination or where you be at that time. So it's really interesting to see how they process it. When we're in this place of it's everywhere. Right. And so that it's just been really interesting to see. And so I've been showing how I use it, but then how I use it as part of my day, where it helps my day versus it's taken my life over. So it's kind of like a responsible use, like there were people that were freaked out when cars showed up, right? What's going to happen to horses? Yeah. Well, we can now do these other things in how we, in transportation. And because it was more efficient. We could get to places faster. We could carry more things. But and for some reason, and people still use horses, but it became for different purposes, right? They still enjoy horses, but it wasn't like the primary mode. I heard.
Oh yeah.
No, go ahead.
How do you use AI in your daily life?
I constantly ask it questions. And I also, being in marketing, there's a lot of we read and then we write stuff. We thought litter all over the place. And I often I fact check myself. I say, who else is saying stuff like this? Or is this a new idea or not a new idea? It is, I think it's at the base level, it is a search engine I've been waiting for.
Yeah.
What was it? A few months ago, I was talking with my husband about we were talking about, AI and especially using things like ChatGPT for just like basic search and stuff. And I was talking about, well, here's how I used to do search myself before ChatGPT. And I was explaining my process and he's like, oh my God, you're literally doing the thing that now that's what the software is doing for you. So it's going to save you days of time, because I used to do a search and I would take all the, the first page and I would literally click through each, read through and just do that deep thing and take my notes. Yeah. And that was a lot of time.
So you're saving a lot of time, but also you maybe were motivated and earned that knowledge in a way that you could have it now without the motivation. So maybe it's harder to tell who an actual motivated thought leader is if everyone has access to that.
Yeah. The question you ask about, are we going to critical thinking, but it's what is going to happen with curiosity? Because critical thinking doesn't come without, you're not going to think about it unless you're curious. And if you ask ChatGPT a question or, Plot or whatever, and it gives you an answer, will you question the answer? Will it make you curious to asking a follow-up question to the AI and be like, well, I don't know. So now let me try asking it in a different forum, see what happens, or go to a place where other humans can react to my question and see if, is this answer here the norm, or is it kind of is the machine answer the norm, or is it kind of it was trained on data that, kind of is on the edges, right? I hope it doesn't get rid of curiosity. I hope it actually expands curiosity, because we can kind of scour the world's information better.
Yeah, maybe we don't need to relearn the building blocks over and over again and can start from a slightly more advanced place. Yeah.
You could be curious about different things. Maybe analogously in cooking, I have to imagine in 1982, if you wanted to make a bowl of ramen at home, it's like that. It's like the old Carl Sagan thing of well, first you need to invent the universe, because you're going to have, I don't even know. I don't even know all the ingredients in ramen, but I'm pretty sure at the food basket over there in Austin in 1982, I couldn't get it, whatever it would be. And I could make it. And so similarly, maybe, I don't know, now we can make ramen or something. I don't know how far that analogy goes. Well, so I was watching, you did it said it was 6 years ago, so I forget the exact year, but you did a talk at Heavy Bit I think you were at Solo about here's a messaging and positioning.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, which was great. I was like, I should send this to all my marketing friends. But so you're making. I'm wondering, you're saying, if you're using AI stuff daily, obviously you don't have to recall this 17-minute talk to perfection, but where would you use it in coming up with your one pager of the messaging and positioning? What would you feed into it, and how would you evaluate it? How would, because that tool didn't really exist back then. So how would you use it nowadays for that kind of thing?
Yeah. And I do this, I'll ask questions of other vendors that we may compete with, right? Or if I have some points on okay, I think this new feature or new whatever, these might be where, the solution that we're building is good for. What do you think? right? And it's like, compare this with, tell me who else, what other companies or people have said these types of things. And in that sense, it's like you can get some of that reaction in a way that's more than like just a list of links to go read, right? Which is where it's different than a search engine. So in that sense, it's there's the people that use it as, they talk about it as like, here's your like buddy at work that never sleeps, never runs out of energy, right?
Sure.
But also needs a lot of very discrete instruction. That's where it's like, you can have some of those cycles. There's some really cool stuff on video. I don't know if you've seen that, where folks will like make a video demo, but then I can have it like translate. There's these AI tools that will translate it into multiple languages. So,
awesome.
Oh, right.
Yeah, some of them, it still needs to be like fact checked, right? Because making sure it's, conjugating everything correctly and meanings are correct. But just cutting some of those cycle times down is really interesting.
There's one thing you've kind of mentioned a few times, to put it in some other different words here, which is, what would you call it? Maybe like uniqueness verification. And especially like if you're trying to figure out like, your differentiation, or I don't know an analogy outside of that, but like, like you're saying, how would someone else say this, or does someone else say it this way? It's almost like making sure you're coming up with something worthwhile, which worthwhile is a judgmental way of putting it. But it's taking advantage of a power that AI stuff has, which is being bland, basically. And so you can see if is this bland, by seeing what it would respond with, or something like that. I don't know. It's a good baseline.
I have a question about that too, which is, how do you know when you're working with something that's so current, how do you know that you're not getting outdated information from ChatGPT or from AI? Like whatever it's trained on is at least a little bit old.
It's whatever, when that model was released, right?
Right.
So it was released. If it's released last week, then if something else was, if there was some new news that came out this week, it might not have it unless somebody fed it into the machine. But if you think about some of the, as marketers, how would competitive analysis or whatever things like that happen normally? Well, you would do like just a regular Google search, and then you would go and read everybody's sites that had anything close, right, to that, to those keywords, or there's always some number of vendors, or like these are our primary competitors, and then here's everybody else that's doing similar use cases, and then humans would sit there and physically read them all, and then try to compare to like, okay, now I wrote this thing. How does that compare with the 500 web pages I just read, split out across my team? So I think that one, it's it's really great at like taking all that information and then kind of synthesizing it back to you, but it's not a replacement for the process.
Yeah, it's a supplement.
It's your work, right?
Yeah.
Some things that were really manual and hard go a little faster. What I like now is it'll give you some answers, and you can say like, cite your sources, and it'll say like, here are the links that I got that information from. So you could still go and click through and read those, but I don't have to read all of the internet to then get to those answers. You talked about how you ask it questions, and I'm wondering if you have any good tips around how to ask it the right questions to get the answers you want, or I guess prompt engineering is the way to say that. I feel like I'm a good communicator, but I don't feel like I'm always communicating. Like I'm a good communicator to humans, and I think I have room for improvement with the way I communicate with an AI chatbot. Do you have any tips? I know this is such the thing in that I am okay. Better. Sometimes it's better than others. Other times, I don't know why. I am probably not the best prompt engineer, but because I think whether you and I are similar in that, like, we like to have a conversation with people. So it's kind of based on the response that person gave me, I'm going to maybe ask like a slightly different follow-up question, or you get to know that personality so that we want to navigate through and get to a common understanding. And unfortunately, like machines and systems, that's what they don't have a personality. They don't have so it's like that. It's ultimately that prompt is basically to turn what seems like human English into this. It's like pseudo code language.
Yeah.
It is regular English terms, but it's I think Kote, what you're saying is like, it sounds like super pedantic the way we have to describe it.
Yeah.
And it feels unnatural sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Based on what you just said about how we're similar in that we like to have a conversation, I have used AI in a way. I like to use it to tell it to ask me questions. Like,
Nice.
like, I want
question.
you, I want to brainstorm an idea with you, and I want you to ask me one idea at a time, like to make a talk, an abstract, for example. And let's really hash out the idea before, and maybe write a talk outline before we try to actually write the abstract. But I'm saying we, like me and ChatGPT or whoever. But
buddy,
the brilliant dummy in my pocket. Yeah. So I really like asking it to ask me questions. And
I've done better with the text side of it. Where I think I've had the most not the results that I wanted is in an image.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That one is like, it gets really squirrely for me very quickly. So I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that are like, oh, this is how you would ask, a string of prompts to get exactly what you want. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I remember in the early days of AI seeing prompts that actually got into like what was happening behind, like outside of natural language, to be able to tell it, like, I want this to be a photorealistic thing, and I don't want you to put any weird styling on it. Like it would be like, tell it 0.532, and then it knows to make it a photorealistic thing. And are we beyond that now? I hope so. Yeah.
I think in some places, I do think that there are folks who are, it's that alone is an art, right? To be really good at the right set of commands and prompts and things. Yeah.
I find with the image stuff, it's a lot like, I only use the ChatGPT and the Midjourney image generation, and it's kind of like you're trying to like reform someone with bad addictive habits to the style that they want to do. And if you can like get them reformed to do something in a different style than Midjourney is like Marvel superhero, perfectly zero body fat people style. And like you can move it, and then you'll go back a few days later and you're like, oh, you're into the stuff again. Like you totally reverted to what you want to do. And like nowadays, ChatGPT wants to do like, what is it, the Studio Ghibli thing, like, or whatever you say it, like, unless you like spend a lot of time prompting it, it's always going to revert to that. And it's just, but what early hack I really like, or hack, a prompt thing I remember reading a couple of years ago was to ask it to do a screen capture from a DVD, and that had a nice aesthetic to it, which is like anytime you could always tell it to do a screen cap from a DVD of an 80s sitcom, and it would come up with pretty delightful things with that. Well, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to tell Kote and I have a game where, and maybe you can do this for us, where in ChatGPT, put in the prompt, make a picture of what you think I look like in a style you think I would appreciate.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I want you to do that and get back to us, please, and we'll post it on our Slack.
I'll do it.
Maybe that should be the thumbnail that we use from now on, if people have access to it.
It depends. I'm going to pre-screen that because you have to in the loop, and then we can decide.
The worse it is, the better it is.
Yeah.
I know. Maybe I can dial up Picasso.
Exactly. Yeah, we could feed it the transcript for the show, and that would be a good. Maybe that will be for our personal collection.
I need to see enough please and thank yous to the AI before we get the transcript.
Well, on a different topic. So let's see. You maybe these numbers better, but like looking over your LinkedIn career thing, right? Like I sort of intuitively knew this, but whatever. I had a foggy notion of this, but you've got like you worked at big tech companies for a little while, like VMware and Riverbed, and then you went off into startup land for 6-7 years or so. I think.
I think so. Probably, yeah.
Depending on which month the year was, and which month the year was, which month in the year it was, and then let's see, and then you went back to VMware where we met. And now you're at Heroku Salesforce, and like, so I'm always interested. Like, so when you went from big companies to like startups, like, what's something that you brought from startup land that like worked? That wasn't being done there, because there's plenty of things that wouldn't work, but like, what's something that you brought to the startup people and they're like, wow, big companies aren't all stupid, like that was an effective technology or tool or something like that?
Yeah. And I think, let's see, I think the biggest thing is, what a lot of times we later complain as being like bureaucracy and red tape is really a framework so that you can help like tens of thousands of people understand what's going on.
Right.
So like and what's interesting is if you take, in some ways, some of those like quote unquote planning templates, or you would see them like every quarter when we kick off doing the thing, we have like these tens, at big companies, sometimes it's like, 10, 30 slides that follow a specific structure. But, when you take a portion of that and you roll it out at a, 30, 40, 10, even 10-person startup, what it does is just frames thinking. We have all these ideas. Well, how will we organize ourselves? And you don't need, when you're in a small startup, you don't need like all the different like various sync meetings and everybody's going to align, because everybody aligns, fits across like the lunch table. Right. But you need a way to organize everyone's opinions into, well, what are we going to do and why, and how will we do what we do? So it still moves faster, but yeah.
I imagine if you have a process defined for that at a smaller company, it can help people not take it personally if their particular idea isn't the one that's being prioritized for that.
Exactly.
Cycle. Yeah.
Exactly. And if you say like, you can do like, I guess long-term planning and startup plan might be like 4 months, but then you can say what we'll do for in the 2-week sprint, right? Yeah.
And do you think at like, let's see, do you think having that, let's call it regular structure of the deliverable, is useful in like that 4-month cadence? Like, is it good to stick with, let's reference it again, like, you've got your heavy bit talk messaging framework. Like, do you think it's more often important to use that same 2-page thing over the course of 3 years, or to like change it around whenever you need something new? I mean, those are two extreme ends, but like, when you figure out how frequently you change it?
Yeah, I think that every time you do, so it depends on how product is releasing, right? I think if you're just releasing all the time, every day, all the time, you might want to just say like, hey, every couple of months, do we do a quick check? Because depending on, I think there's 2 things that can change it. One is you've shipped so many new features or so much new products that what you're saying, who you're reaching and like what you're providing for your customer has changed enough, materially enough that you have to take a look at it. And then the other one is if the world changes around you. I think that this time last year, we were not thinking it would be what it is now, right? So much has just happened in the last 6 months that even has changed, like, what do we mean when we're talking about AI, right? What is it going to do with us in our day-to-day at work and at home and what have you? So like those 2 things are the things where it's like, okay, it's kind of like redefining, like, who are we in this world, and who are we, and what are we bringing to bear?
What did we think AI was going to be 6 months ago versus what it's actually become?
I mean, I don't know how we answered that question. Are we having like a? I think some of the things around I have a question that I like to ask on, like, what are we trying to really solve with this whole thing? Because it's really interesting to hear different people talk about it. And then the like existential question of like, what is meaning in life. um, but like, it's interesting to see how can be applied to things like automation, because there were just some hard problems like that we couldn't solve before there. I think it's really interesting to see where it's going, just in our world in software development, like what's happening there. Like who can create what has been really interesting. Like the definition is expanding, and I'm curious to see where it goes. I don't, it's not going to be, no tool solves everything, because with each new problem we solve, we create other ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe the domains that it's touching, and the way that it's able to orchestrate tools and processes across domains is maybe all just more expansive than we expected, especially so soon.
It is. Yeah. Because it's like, think about, so in the late 90s, when I was first entering the job market, I remember we worked with, I was working with these IT, it's like systems management tools, right? Like, and it was a whole low code thing where you are dragging and dropping boxes in order to say, like, here's my server, and like my big server, and it's located here because I scanned the barcode. But that's how you build like this service management workflow. And it was super rigid. A lot of those, like nowadays, low code tools are still very drag and drop. But then, like, what happens with that when you're like, I can just type some things. You can read my log information and probably have a better map of where are my services, where is my stuff, than me having to go find some mix of physical and cloud instances and what have you. So
it's like your search thing. You don't have to look through every page of the first.
I don't have to physically search. Yeah.
Or we have different people specialized in different layers of the stack.
Yes.
And when we need less people to maintain those layers, or maybe almost zero people, we're just going to have no idea what we're building on top of anymore, because AI is understands it, and no humans have to.
Well, I mean, what was a joke? It's like, oh, we have the cloud, no one needs data centers anymore. Well, there's a lot of people working on very deep, low-level kernel and hardware stuff at the cloud providers. It's just concentrated, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we just moved it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, so I have another big small marketing question here, and that is, let's see which one of the. Well, I'll ask this one first, which is, so it's kind of connected to what I was asking earlier. Is I think, well, as Whitney likes to say, she's relatively new to tech, so maybe she's only been through this once. But I think you and I, Betty, we've been through these cycles where like new executives come in at a company that you worked at for a long time over the course of all of our careers. And then there's a new template to use for marketing, or a new system to use. And like, it seems like you often don't have a choice because your bosses have told you to do this, that you have to kind of like translate what you're doing. And like, but is there anything good that comes of that? Like why are you shifting to, should you assume that because the previous regime is no longer there, what they were doing didn't work, and so now we have this new thing, and we need, instead of Betty's 2-page marketing and positioning template, we have the 1.5-page marketing and positioning template that you print out in landscape, and you draw doodles and pictures on one side, and then you connect to, I don't know, I'm just making up some silly system, right? But like,
or you're commenting to when I first came back and joined Tansu and said, like, do this, guys.
No, it's a common occurrence, right? And sometimes sometimes it's good and bad, and I guess like the question is like, how does an individual or a team figure out how to not cynically embrace the work? Right? Like, and figure out doing something, because there's not an option to not do something. I don't know. It's a weird phenomena that seems to happen.
Yeah, because you're like, are we just rearranging the deck chairs?
That's right.
Mhm.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then also, yeah, exactly. Go on.
I have the cynical, like, oh, there's a new executive. They have to come put their fingerprints on it to make sure we all know it's theirs. And it's, how does this actually affect me?
And I guess to add more rambling to the question, like as an analyst, I would see at startup. Well, I would see at big companies, but you see at startups especially where, as they figure out what we would call their product market fit, of course these things evolve, right? Because kind of like you were saying earlier, if you've got new developments or a new market that you have, you evolve it. But I don't know. I mean, it seems like that has to be something that whoever's in charge of marketing, or even more so, the permanent people right underneath marketing, to use kind of a government organ thing. Like, that's a core competency they have, that every 1 or 2 years, you got to redo the slides in whatever the new format is.
Yeah, and I would say one, probably guilty as charged from just places I've landed. It's twofold, I think. Sometimes it is definitely like, especially if companies are bringing in new executives, likely what they're bringing them in also for like, hey, you've done certain things at other companies. We like transformations or growth or whatever. They're hired because of certain type of experience and skill sets. Come do that here. And so they may have like, well, these are some of the steps we put in to do that. And I do have a format that I like. Not all of the leaders brought in that way are maybe they're tasked with that change, but maybe they do not have the authority for that change, because it depends on, who it is. Meaning like if we use our, where we worked at together, like within the business unit, we could do certain things, but we still rolled up into a corporate planning and a corporate structure process. So corporate rolls out here's the templates and the formats, right? So some of it is definitely like, new leader is like, if they don't change anything, then it's kind of like, well, what are you here for? But and then everybody has their their quirks and their styles that they like to do the styles and formats that they like to use. So that's kind of a thing. It's funny because
what's your style or format? What's one thing that's unique about your leadership?
I did a lot of reflection after time at VMware before I went to start looking for my next thing. And it was, hey, here's what, here's what I know that I can bring to an organization, what I do well. But the big part of that is I don't want to just come in guns a-blazing. Because a big thing is you have to honor the past. So if you join an existing company that has momentum or a certain size already, you have to honor what's there and then your place in it. If you're at a brand new startup, if you're at an early startup, you have to honor the original drive that made those founders create the thing. And then think about like, what is your place in that to take it to that next step? So that bit is like, here's what I know, what I can do. And is it, is 100% of my skills applied, in full force at this stage for the next year? Or is it, what should I be doing? What part of my skills should I be leveraging first to help take them to, take folks to the next goal? So I think it's always a blend. It's like, hey, I have a way of like deducing like information and organizing things and helping put strategies and plans together. But then it's like, okay, let's look at where we are in time and place and the structures that are here, and then working within that.
I think that's so wise. Yeah.
It's very different.
And it doesn't mean you're not going to knock shit down eventually, but you're going to understand it first and then bulldoze it. A lot more respectful.
So how have you, that is an interesting line of thinking, and having worked at most recently at Heroku, right? And then also at VMware, like both of those companies, I guess VMware's older, but they're relatively in the same generations, kind of, sort of. Maybe Heroku was a freshman when VMware was a senior in high school, but like, you know, it all kind of comes out in the wash as you get older. But like that was one thing I was curious to hear about is like, so when you joined Heroku, like there almost, I have no idea, but there could almost be a crushing amount of history and culture for how old the company is. Similarly, like with VMware, like you could come into VMware or IBM or Oracle and just sort of be like, well, I thought I had some ideas, but now I'm a company XYZ person, right? Like there's like nothing, I'm just here, like, because it's so monolithic. But I don't know, what do you do with that like big chunk of history? Like how do you work with it? Or does it need to be malleable and at some point?
Yeah, this is a great question. And with VMware, what's interesting is I worked there from 2005 to 2013.
Oh.
So I think I was, it was
Very
maybe
early.
very early. I think it was maybe my third job out of college. It was VMware was 1,500 people when I joined.
Yeah.
And then when I left, it was 20,000 people because I was like, it's too big now. I can't do it, right? And I thought, you know, because you go from literally knowing everybody and having like the free lunch Wednesdays or whatever that we had back then to who are all these people that I see on campus? And then, you know, going back to VMware was interesting because I was like, oh my gosh, it's like double the size when I left.
Yeah.
But there were enough people that I had worked with the first time or people who had joined towards the end of my first tenure that were still there that, you know, you had that I can call on a few familiar faces, understand what's going on. Who are the players? Who does what? How can I find things? Because I also rejoined the company during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So
Right.
VMware used to be a very in-office culture, and that's, you know, you walk around and you meet people in the kitchen or during lunch, and you can navigate around that way. But that was I don't know how I would have done that without having those
knowing people.
So
yeah.
not people, but processes. When you came back, could you see some of the old processes that you remember from the early days still there? No, it was all.
And this is where the people helped. Having familiar people, they're like, hey, remember that? Well, it's now this.
Okay.
And go talk here. You should talk to these people. Have you met them yet? So it's like having a little guide to help you around. And one with trust already built in because you knew them from a decade before. So that's a whole thing. I remember thinking like, gosh, I don't know how I would join this company just brand new. Like, especially during a pandemic for something that was such an in-office culture. Fast forward, joining the Heroku team at Salesforce. Salesforce is a much bigger company. But, you know, I think one of the things that's really interesting about the culture is every new employee has what we call a trail guide. So it's someone that's your buddy for 3 months. So they are there to answer all your questions. And I remember my trail guide, I would just be peppering them every day, like, what's this? What's that? And they'll be like, oh, go search here, or you should meet these 3 people, you know, so it's the helping make those connections. And it's been twofold. Is one, understanding the broader, like, you know, what is Salesforce like? What is Salesforce culture like? You know, how does Salesforce do things? And then also, hey, what is the time and place for Heroku as a product inside the portfolio? So what have we done? What are we trying to do? You know, and like, how do we do things? You know, because, you know, this is always the case when you're in a big company with lots of products. Each product has its own little personality inside of the family. Yeah, the portfolio. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm 9 months in now. I feel like sometimes I've just shown up, and also that I've been here forever.
I like this idea of like the lore keeper slash trail person who can just like explain like, oh, let me tell you why we do that. Or like, this is how that came about. This is why we only have burritos on Tuesday.
At Datadog, I have an onboarding triad: a manager, a mentor, and a buddy. So someone for technical questions, someone for getting around questions, and then someone whose job it is to make sure I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
Wait, what does the buddy do?
Yeah, they're more like who do I need to know, or how do I find this, or like where do I look up this? How do I claim my internet expenses or whatever? I have a buddy.
Okay.
Or yeah, maybe also a safer person to ask who has no skin in the game.
Is it more peer level, same type of job function, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the mentors went above, but very technical. Mm-hmm.
So then on the other side, when you see, I mean, not to only generalize it, but like, let's say you promote someone from within an organization to become like the VP of marketing. Like, what does that signal or usually lead to different than if you hire someone from the outside? You know, the rare time when someone from within gets promoted, I guess.
Yeah. No, I think, as an outcome, it's like, someone promoted within brings the benefit of like, they already know everyone. They know how the organization works. They may or may not be from that product group, as an example, right? Like you could have someone from a different team, different focus area, but they know the function. I think that plus oftentimes the reason for bringing someone in from the outside is like they're bringing a perspective on the market or that portion of the industry or a competing product, right? And they're going to bring that knowledge and kind of like network in.
Yeah. I mean, bringing something new to the table that didn't exist, obviously, which can be great. So another thing I like to ask people in marketing is like, what is in our kind of marketing is what do you think's up with the industry analysts nowadays? Like, how do you, like, on the sell side, I don't know a better word for it, use them? Like, or how do you involve them in the ongoing work of the company?
Oh my gosh, I love working with analysts. Are you kidding me? Yeah, I spend a ton of time with them. I mean, different analysts, different firms focus on some different things, different types of whether it's more advice or it's like they're going to help they do research or they do custom content work. Some specialize in different like segments. Like there's like the boutique ones, right? So I make it a point to speak with all of them regularly. That's like one of the first things I start to do to get a collective opinion. And then work, because a lot of like end user customers do work with those analysts too, because it helps. It's like their agent, right? To get like an aggregate experience, aggregate feedback. So, you gotta make sure you spend time with them.
And do you have like, so, I mean, obviously, since I've been an analyst, I spend way too much time thinking about them as their own industry. But like, it seems like, so if we look at the analysts, you still have like Gartner and Forrester and IDC, which are like, they've cracked the model. Like they've been doing that model for a long time. And then, there's the boutique people like your Red Monks who also, interestingly, have also cracked the model in the same way. Like they've done a little bit of new things here. But there's also like for example, I'm kind of fascinated by like what's up with Futurum, because they seem to be like bundling together a bunch of analyst things and then seeing like, what if we took that crazy video stuff the Cube people do and like analysticize it? How do you say that? Did industry analyst version of it. And I don't know, that's a weird mixture that they have going on. And I don't know, like, do you work with the Futurum people? Do you pay attention to what they do? Like, so how do they fit into the grand scheme of things?
Oh, it's like the Futurum and like the Cube, SiliconANGLE, like I see that they're both like a analyst as well as kind of like media, like reporters.
Yeah.
More so than like, cause whereas like the big ones like the Gartners, Forresters, and IDCs do a ton of like research. I see those like the Cube and like the Futurums doing a lot of it's almost like they're like news channels, right?
Exactly.
As part of their analysis. And so I think it's interesting to see the models evolve. Futurum's been doing a lot of consolidation of some of the independents into one, into their larger organization. So I think it's always evolving.
A remedial question, which is, when you say you spend a lot of time with analysts or spend a lot of time talking to analysts, are you paying them for their time to give you information? Are you a source for them? What's who's getting from what? How? Yeah.
No, they have all these. They have subscription models and such, but there's a lot of you can brief analysts anytime. It's like you pitch them and you're like, because we did that at startups when we weren't clients of some of them, but we'd say hey, we have news, we're in this space, and you would submit it in, and if it's an area that they were interested in covering, they'll might give time, because they want to balance. If you're known as the person in the industry that knows all about X topic, or you're going to talk to the big companies as well as the new up and coming companies in that space. So
you tell them what you're doing, and you don't get to ask them questions unless you pay them. Yeah.
It's called an inquiry. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So there's all these different models. Yeah.
Yeah. I used to think of it exactly as Betty is saying, that you can talk at them, but they try to get money if you want them to talk at you. Right. If you want to ask questions, that's when they prefer to be paid. But, as I'm sure Betty never does this, but you can kind of throw in a few freebies and questions throughout a briefing because sometimes you find analysts who just can't help themselves, but other ones are professional. And
I think Cortini's saying when he was an analyst, he was always throwing in some questions.
Sure. I'll always, I don't know. I have I don't talk with analysts that much anymore, but when I do, I'm always overly polite about not getting free shit from them. But I don't know, maybe I shouldn't be. But anyhow,
I try to be respectful of everybody's business models.
There you go. That's in the everything I need to know about life I learned in my MBA program.
Just I'd want everyone to be respectful of ours. I'm just trying to.
That's right.
Pay it forward in the same way.
The second golden rule of business. I don't know what the first is, but that feels like it would be there somewhere.
I have a Gen AI issue that's come up for me that I wonder if you can relate to. So I review a lot of talk proposals, either from friends or peers or sometimes as part of a program committee. And they're all starting to become the same Gen AI proposal. Very similar formats, very similar sentence links, very similar dense sentence structure, 2 adjectives when one will do. And it's kind of flattened out how they all look. And I'm wondering, do you see the same thing again across marketing copy, where you can be look at a website and be oh, that was obviously written by Gen AI? Or do you, yeah.
Some things, because I'm if it seems it's where it's it's missing a little personality.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know what you mean. It's we took the what was it when we were in high school and college, the MLA format or whatever. It's now weirdly everyone's following it, and it's become super boring.
It's so boring. And I'm finding where if there's silliness or even mistakes, then I know it's human and I'm more attracted to it in a way. Yeah.
Yeah. The quirks are missing from the phrasing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think when you and I were talking about this previously, Whitney, you pointed out something interesting, which is this is A+ material, right? And there's no flaws in it. So maybe creative flaws, as you're saying, but if you are asked in a conference proposal to address how you're going to help these 3 people and the takeaways they're going to have, it will do that, right? Whereas a human proposal, probably not. Or the way it's going to do it is not going to be so great to ask these things.
I mean, the sheer number of times we've always had to ask people that we were working with to make sure you had a takeaway for the audience.
Exactly.
They're like, what? I'm like, why should they come to your talk? Make sure you say why they should come and then add a few takeaways. This is what they'll learn.
So now the takeaway part is taken care of, but now you need to add how you're human and how going to this talk is different from just reading the documentation.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes.
It's shifting. Yeah.
So I have one last like enterprise software marketing question, and then maybe if Whitney has one.
Keeping us on track here. He's just like, let's take it back to the business questions.
Oh, sure, multiple tracks. But so in our thinking through the places you've worked, you've like for example, when you were at Docker, I think I don't know, I have the timelines wrong, but I think you might have switched tracks between these two things. But in a lot of the kind of software that we've all worked on, your buyer is not the user, essentially, right? Like you're selling to someone way up who never uses the thing. And what do you do with that marketing wise? Like, how do you, because in that situation, I mean, based on my experience, maybe you've got some great counterintuitive insight, but like you have to talk to both of those groups. And so how do you figure out balancing that out or what to do? Like, how do you manage those two groups that you're marketing to?
The struggle is real if you're trying to get to one messaging doc, for sure. That 2-pager becomes like a novel. But I think that at the highest level, like you want to like kind of have a messaging structure that can support that people have to make a big buying decision, because ultimately their buying decision is anchored on, because it's the outcomes that they want for the groups of individuals that have to use it. So like in our developer tool space, right? Like it's all, if we say like, oh, it's going to be so great for like, Jenny when she does this in her day to day. What does it mean for Jenny and her colleagues, all of her buddies that are doing the same thing every day? How does that result into something at the end? You take 15, 20, 100 Jennies, if that makes sense. So you do a messaging framework and you have this outcome. And then like, if I were to break this down within outcome one of some benefit value statement, what is the value to the business? What is the value to the team? What is the value to the individual? Does that still line up? Can I cascade it? Can I follow that rabbit hole down and it doesn't seem unauthentic, right?
I like that. It's stoic.
Yeah. Also, I mean, this may not be universally applicable, but it's making me think that we've got all this. What would you call it? Cant or secret language of marketing, and outcome is definitely one of them. And like maybe an outcome means like the aggregate of a bunch of people's work, right? The aggregate of Jennies, right? So like all your Jennies working together equals an outcome. And so whenever you're doing outcome-based marketing, it's like the aggregate of the work, where I guess a Jenny could have a singular outcome, but that seems more like, but it's, So the cascading roll up. Do cascades go up or down? I should figure that out, but like.
In this, I think in our space of developer tooling, I think it cascades up, because if we don't impact the day-to-day of the individuals and the collective experience of those individuals that we're serving, there is no higher order like business results outcome thing.
Right. And you kind of started that way of saying like, well, you got to talk to the buyer, because if they don't buy it, there's no Jenny. Or
Jenny isn't helped.
Jenny will be there, but yes, you're right. Jenny is not helped by your tool. So start with the buyer first.
I have one more question, and that is, so we kind of talked about how Gen AI can help you research a lot faster, or how it could help write marketing copy more quickly, whether or not it's as good. But like probably the whole process of getting to good is shorter because we have Gen AI's help. So the question becomes, like, do you need less people? Or if those people are now freed up to do new things, what are those new things? Like, what frontiers are being explored?
I think that there's never enough people to do the creative work anyways. We're always I mean, we've all been in some form of marketing, and it's like, okay, my backlog list just keeps growing, and I can never. And it's we always ask our bosses like reprioritize.
Yeah.
I think that what we have the opportunity to do is actually help more of the customers, the users that we met to, because sometimes when we reprioritize, we're like, oh, but we knew this one feature was like kind of quirky, so we needed to, make this video or write these blogs, and we never get to it, right?
How does marketing directly help customers?
So when I think about marketing, because I also in this new role have like folks in DevRel, I think about like what can we do? What the people that we're trying to serve with our product, what are they trying to do in their jobs today, and how can we show them that like using some variation of our product in some way, make some of those things that are hard easier, or is it a new way that they can do it? Or, you have a new release and, the feature works a certain way. So make sure that make sure that we create the material to educate the user to do the steps in this order, as an example.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So
making sure they're enabled. They're going to, if they're successful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've solved the marketing issue. Working at places small, large, going in between. Lots of good sources, and also we've figured out some ways to use generative AI. How is that for a wrap up, Whitney? I don't usually do the.
We'll ask ChatGPT later.
That's right. We could ask for a wrap up, and it'll be perfect, but oddly not fun to listen to.
Oh my God.
I'd rather you hear you do a bad job than hear Gen AI do a good job.
Thank you. Anyhow, well. Speaking of things that would be a good job, if people wanted to check out more of your stuff, Betty, where do you have a cabin on the World Wide Web? They can come knock on and look through your library. What do you got going on there?
So I've got BettyJunod.com, but it's a little out of date, but you can still go there. And then, work-wise, just check out what we're doing at Heroku.
Yes, very, very good. Well, I recommended earlier, but I think your 17-minute, 45-second, however long it is, marketing overview, just do that. And I think marketing will improve at many organizations. We'll all help the users by having a better messaging framework and getting marketing people to spend something their time on something better than coming up with a new one. You can always modify it, but start with that. So speaking of things that you can't modify, is that the past that you just spent listening to software-defined interviews. If you want to get the a link to that presentation, other things we mentioned, you can go to softwaredefinedinterviews.com/103, and it'll be there. We have a Slack channel you can join along with the other podcast, Software Defined Talk, all sorts of stuff over there, where you could start submitting your picture of what was the prompt, Whitney?
Make a picture of what you think I look like in a style you think I would appreciate.
Yeah, just put that in the Software Defined Interviews channel there, and we'll see what's there. I think if you haven't seen it already, you should check out the one that it generated for Whitney. I think
it's pretty wonderful.
All right,
mine right after this.
yeah, that'll be fun to see. All right, well, with that, we'll see everyone next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.